Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Out in the Woods. It's me, your friendly neighborhood host, Jacob, and today I am joined by yet another special guest. Welcome to the show, Natalia. Hello, Natalia. How are you doing, honey?
Good, Jacob. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm fantastic. So Natalia, go ahead and introduce yourself. Where do you live and what do you do?
So, my name is Dr. Natalia Rivera. I live in Corpus Christi, Texas, and I'm a clinical psychologist working for the VA.
Oh my gosh. Oh, really? You work for the VA?
Yep, I do. I assist in primary care. And so, when a veteran is going to see their primary care doctor and they talk about wanting to talk to mental health or get some information on different services that we have, I'm the person that comes into the room and assists in that way.
Oh, that's really fantastic. Look, we're gonna have to talk a little bit off the record about the VA because my mom actually just recently retired last year from working for the VA in the micro lab over here in Mississippi.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah,
Nice. Yeah,
yeah.
we'll definitely have to talk about that.
Yeah, because audience, if you didn't know, the VA is just like a lot of other government organizations. There's like a hierarchy. There's a whole lot in the VA, or at least there was in
Mhm.
our local VA. But nobody's perfect and no organization is perfect. But there's I'm sure you could tell me some stories, Natalia. I'm sure you could tell me some stories.
Oh, I bet I could.
So Natalia, when did you know that you were different?
um, honestly, so kindergarten, if you were asked my parents, probably earlier than that, but I knew that I was different in kindergarten. I was watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit,
Uh-huh.
and Jessica Rabbit came onto frame. And I remember staring at how beautiful she was in that dress and her hair and just like the sultry way she was like carrying herself. And I thought to myself, I'm like, wow, I really like this. Like, I really, really like this. Of course, at 6 years old in the 90s, you have no idea
Yeah.
what's happening. And so that was like the moment that I knew. And then since then, like after that, I saw this girl that in my class and I thought she was really pretty. And I told my best friend at the time, who was a boy, and he was like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know how you don't know this, but girls can't like girls and boys can't like boys. And so it was like that first bit of, oh, I can't be this. And it
Mhm.
stuck with me for a while. But yeah, that was just like a rabbit was my gay awakening.
Look, I think she was a lot of people's gay awakening and straight awakening. I think Jessica Rabbit is just an awakening overall. I mean, it's always the redheads. It really is.
It always is. You know what? She needs a lot more credit for a lot of people's like coming, coming to terms with who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, so you said that your parents would definitely say five. What was your home life like?
So my home life was awesome. I'm a military kid, and so I was born and raised moving everywhere, and we moved like I believe the last count I did was this last move for me total. I moved 17 times, and when I was a kid up until high school, I moved 11, and
Wow.
so we were really really close. Like my parents and eventually my little sister came along for the ride too. But yeah, we were exceptionally close. And so it was really hard to make friends and meet new people, but we always had each other. And so when I came out, I told my mom first. My dad was deployed, and
Mm.
my mom, I remember it. She looked at me and she was like, "Okay, I just need a second." She went outside and she came back and she goes, "You know, I'm not upset with who you are. I just know how difficult your life is going to be." And then from like then on, she was like the most supportive person. She told my dad, and like they've always been my backbone. So I was incredibly lucky.
Hmm.
Some other family members not so much, but yeah, they've always been in my corner.
I was gonna say, so Natalia, I'm assuming you're Hispanic, yeah?
Yep, Puerto Rican.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So yeah, you're the second Puerto Rican guest I've had on the show. Shout out to Jennifer and Jonathan Diaz. I love Maricans. Which is the most white liberal thing that I could have ever said. Wow. But I'm not going to delete that from this episode. Anyway, so were you very close to your heritage, to your culture?
Yeah, definitely. Both my parents met in Puerto Rico. Both my parents are Puerto Rican. My mom is also half Spanish. Her mom's from Spain. And so we've always eaten a lot of Puerto Rican food, cooked Puerto Rican food. We have the traditions and everything. So I always felt like exceptionally close to Puerto Rico at all times, no matter where in the world we were. And when we would go back, it was especially, well, special because it was like I was seeing different parts of the island in a new way. Like I would meet new
Hmm.
cousins, or I would go to the rainforest, but I'd see something different. And so it was always magical to me. Like it was this place, almost like how people talk about Narnia, or it was this magical place that they could only access in books. And Puerto Rico for me was like this magical place that I had to wait until the end of the year to go to, but it was there and I could see it and I could touch it. It was tangible. So I love Puerto Rican culture. I wish that there was more like representation of it in media and in just really anywhere, because it's such a beautiful culture.
Hmm. Um, how is Puerto Rican culture as far as the LGBT community goes?
So I think, like with any Hispanic culture, it is difficult,
Hmm.
right? I think with Puerto Rico is no exception. I think it's gotten better, but there are some things that kind of haunt us, like the machismo kind of
Hmm.
culture, where it's a lot to do with men that may be gay, or even the trans community in Puerto Rico gets a lot of flack, but you see a lot more representation and a lot more advocates coming out of Puerto Rico than they once did. And so I can only hope that within the next like few years that'll become a lot more accepting. But it is not unusual to go to like San Juan or Old San Juan and to see like just LGBT representation all around. I think at this point it's just people accepting that this is the new world order, is that queer people are no longer going to be silent, which is the world I want to live in.
Same, same. I mean, it's 2021 now. Like we have to keep pushing forward.
Exactly.
So wow, you are just like well traveled. My last guest was very well traveled, but I don't know, you might give him a run for his money. So so you've lived quite a bit all across the United States, obviously, as a military kid. Um,
Mhm.
how did that compare to your time in the South? Because you told me you spent like a good chunk of time in the South.
Yeah, so
And you
it's
currently live in
funny
the
because
South,
I
because I consider Texas the South. So
oh yeah, Texas is definitely it's
yeah.
definitely more southern than I've been in a while. So but yeah, so I lived all over the states. I also lived internationally for a while. So I lived in Japan, Korea, and the Netherlands. So it was a pretty turbulent, fun but turbulent childhood. Um, I I have to say, like, growing up in the South is tough, especially as like a queer kid that people know is queer.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because like I didn't really know how to hide it very well, and I think that people knew that, and so moving to other places, I was just like the artsy cool kid, and the kid that did debate and whatever. But in the South, it was just very much so like pointing out how different I was. And I think it didn't help that when I lived in Arkansas for a good amount of time. And when I was there, I went to a Catholic school. And yeah, I didn't jive well
Mm.
in that community. And so I think that my time in the South, childhood wise, wasn't the best, but I did learn like the best. Trying to think of how to say this, but I guess I learned how to appreciate and love myself more, kind of from the adversity.
Yeah.
And so I'm thankful for the South in that sense. But I mean, I love the South. I think that the South has so many amazing cultural, if we're going to talk about culture again, so many amazing cultural gifts to give to the country. And I think that sometimes it gets overshadowed by just a lot of the negative stuff, you know, which is big negative stuff, but I just wish that there's a way we can move past that, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, it starts with changing the systems that are in place here, you know, because there are, you know, there's a lot of shitty parts of Southern culture and there are a lot of great parts of Southern culture, you know, the hospitality,
Agreed.
the food. I mean, look, we have obesity and heart disease and diabetes down here for very good reasons, for very, very good reasons, you know. Um,
Absolutely.
and the thing is also, like, the South is also like kind of an amalgamation of all sorts of different cultures too, especially, you know, you get around Louisiana, you know, you have the French influence, the Hispanic influence, you know, the Haitian, the island nation influences, all of that, you know. It's really, it's the South is a gem, you know. You just have to dig through some shit to get to it, you know.
Absolutely.
So, you know, you said that, you know, you kind of learned to love yourself being that openly queer kid in the South. How else would you say that the South shaped you as Natalia?
That's a really good question. I think that a lot of things that are truly Southern, like the values that all Southern people grow up with, and you mentioned hospitality, that's a big part of it. I think that anchored itself into my personality,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because I lived in the South a good amount of the time when I did live in the States. And I was always struck by just how hospitable everybody was. You know, when there was a new person on the block, you were instantly invited over. You were always made to feel welcome. And so I think that for a person that moved constantly and always felt out of place, every time I was in the South, I instantly felt like I had a place, even
Mm-hmm.
if it was fleeting before I started school. Like
Yeah.
it felt like I was comfortable. And I think in that sense, I kind of took that as part of my personality and really try to take that, especially in my therapy, as, you know, you're here for a reason. You met me for a reason. I met you for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point in not making this comfortable. Let's be comfortable, but we can still be comfortable and promote change. You know what I mean? Like, I can respect you and you can respect me, but we can also still be change agents, right? And so
Absolutely.
I think those different aspects of Southern values really became part of me. And then I kind of transformed it into like more of a Natalia concept. So how can I be like pro Black Lives Matter, pro trans rights, LGBT rights, you know,
Mm-hmm.
pro POC, but also promote like this idea of comfort, of universal hospitality, of feeling like family that only
Mm-hmm.
the South can give, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah. even if even if, you know, it's temporary, well, you know, specifically in the South, you know, a lot of that, you know, a lot of that hospitality can either be temporary, you know, like you said, you know, I could enjoy it at least until I went to school, you know, or it can be
Yeah.
fake, you know. They invite, you know, you can, you're even if you really just really do not like the person, once you start inviting someone to the cookout, you have to, you know, you kind of feel obligated, you know. You'd look bad if you didn't, you know.
Right, very grin and bear it, you
Yeah.
know. The whole what is that phrase? I love it. Oh, bless your heart. That
Yeah.
is, you know, people make fun of that. That is a very real that is a
It
very
is.
real thing.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Um, so when did you develop a love for psychology?
Oh wow. So I'm a nerd.
Hmm.
I nerd out with a lot of different things. Psychology is one of those things where I always had a love for it. I just didn't know what it was called. When I was a kid, um, part of our libraries, anywhere we went, was just like this treasure trove of like old National Geographics.
Hmm.
And I don't know whose idea it was to just save up National Geographic magazines all the way back to like 1982. But there was always like just this huge stockpile. And in any of those old ones, there was always like this really large, like, this week in psychology, or this new thing in psychology, or whatever. And the most interesting cases. And so I would find myself in the back of the library reading those, or I'd read up on Jung, or on Carl Rogers, or on, Anna Freud, or any of these other people that have just touched psychology in a beautiful way, and sometimes in a bad way, right? Right. All the terrible things that happen in psychology. It's just like, honestly, psychology's bonkers.
Yeah, no. The mind is a fascinating place. Well, a fascinating and terrifying place. As someone who is currently in therapy, I can tell you it's a wonderful and terrible thing.
Terrifying is a good word, because it's true. It is it is insane how quickly you can get lost in your own mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, depression or anxiety, any of those things that you just like commonly experience, and we all use it as almost like it's kind of fun to say now, like, oh, mentally ill,
Right,
but it's
right.
true. Like, it's so easy to slip into those cycles of just depression and not know where to go. And I think, like, even this is my field, I'm a therapist, and there have been times where I felt so down that I didn't know where to go, even though I do therapy for a living, right?
Yeah.
It is one of those things where it is really a labyrinth, and we don't think about how multidimensional our mind truly is.
No, I mean, because your mind it's more than just thinking. I mean, your brain controls all aspects of your body. So, the terrifying thing about anxiety and depression is not just what your brain is making you think, but it's also what it's making you feel on an emotional level, and also what it's making you feel on a physical level,
Right, absolutely. And to like go a step further, it also colors the way in which you see the world, right?
Yes.
And so if you're a kid in the South, and you don't have the best school life, you have a supportive family, the way that you see the world, the way that you see people, the way that you interact with others, it's going to be colored because of that depression. Because why is this person being nice to me? What is their angle?
Yes.
Or on the inverse, well, I don't want to, this person invited me to this birthday party, I don't want to go because they're going to think I'm the weird kid or whatever. And talk about a way to further isolate yourself just because your brain is analyzing it to think it's going to be like that.
Right. Did you meet a lot of other queer people in your psychology program? Do you know, or rather, do you know if there were a lot of other queer doctors out there of psychology?
Yes, there are. It was really one of those things where if you look, you will find them. So in psychology, there's different divisions in the American Psychological Association. And Division 44 is the Society for Gay, Lesbian, Transgender, and Bisexual people. And in that division, psychologists can join these different divisions. And in that division, it's all queer psychologists and allies. So we talk about at our different regional meetings ways in which we can better promote psychology or psychotherapy with LGBT populations, things that are happening in the world. How can we better help during Black Lives Matter and those big uprisings? We talked about ways in which we could better serve the POC and Black communities that are also queer, because that seems to happen is that we'll have, a racial uprising for good reason, right? Enough is enough. But then the Black trans experience no longer exists, or it's not as important, right? You have to pick one. Either you're pro-Black or you're pro-trans, but it can't exist at the same time, which is ridiculous. And so Division 44, what they do is they take like these different social movements and things that are happening politically, and they find ways in which to better support the LGBT community and the clients that we serve. And so if you're looking for a LGBT affirming therapist, there are a number of different ways that you can find one. And so for a very common one would be a website. It's called Psychology Today. And
That's where I
on
found
there,
mine.
yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. You go in the filters and you find LGBT affirming. If you are a person that belongs to like a kink culture or population, trans, um, polyamorous relationships, there's filters for that. And the doctors that and counselors that are on that site actually will tag the things that they feel or the populations that they feel comfortable with. So you always know going into it, okay, this person is polyamory and sex work affirming, but they're also LGBT accepting. So I feel good going into it.
That's really fantastic. That's really, really cool. And yeah, once again, I always shout out Psychology Today. Like, I think it takes all of the worst and most brain bashing parts about having to find a therapist out of the equation, especially whenever like, you're in that low place and you really like, you need it bad. Like it makes it so quick and it makes it so simple. Um,
Yeah. And nothing
Now,
is more uncomfortable than like trying to find somebody that won't look at you and think being gay is a problem.
right.
Right? You're like, this is just a part of me, but it's not why I'm here.
Well, and the thing is too, like I have a lot of friends that have been in and out of therapy before because not all therapists are the right fit, and
Right.
that's the harsh part about being specifically a millennial. We don't make the most money, and so quote unquote splurging on a therapist, is a real commitment. It's something that you're taking your time and your money and you're putting it in. And sometimes, like therapists, whether they mean to or not, can not necessarily make things worse, but they can definitely not, they cannot be the right fit for some people, certain ones.
Right. Absolutely. And it's kind of like, as a fellow millennial, there are multiple commitments in your life, right? You're a committed partner, whether you have children or not, which is, great, or great that you don't have children. A house, a car, and a therapist. Like those are all the biggest commitments that we as millennials can have. And so I always try to emphasize that even if I have a client or a patient that I'm seeing, and for whatever reason we just don't click, they don't feel comfortable, I don't take offense to that. And I think that can sometimes be a something that people think is like, oh, I don't want to hurt this person's feelings, so I'm going to keep coming back. Open communication is always the first step to change, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm not the person that's going to help be the change agent for you, because I'm not steering the ship, you are. I'm just here to talk you through and guide you and whatever. That is my role, right?
Right.
And if I'm not that person and I don't make you feel comfortable, then I want to point you to the person that does. Because ultimately that is going to get you toward your goal. And so don't feel anxious or anything. You're right. Sometimes you have to try before you buy a therapist, and do a couple sessions. If you don't feel 100%, you try the next one. But when you find that person, stay with them, like solidify it. And even if it's one of those things where it does come down financially, pushing out sessions is okay, right? As long as you just don't stop. It's the consistency.
Right. Now, working for the VA, and understanding the importance psychologically, I guess, of being affirming for trans people, specifically. What was it like for you working for the VA during the Trump administration whenever he specifically banned trans people from the military?
So that was heartbreaking. A lot of my I guess maturity as a queer person, I always say that like there's two births, like your actual birth and then you being reborn into the queer community, because it really does feel like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of me growing up as a queer individual was assisted by a trans woman of color. And so when that whole thing happened, there was a lot of things that happened during that time frame that made it so difficult for mental health services, especially with our veterans, that are POC, that are Black, that are in the LGBT community. But when that came out, it was particularly horrific, especially because, you know, men and women and non-binary individuals that go into the military, that is a special kind of bravery. That is a special kind of selflessness that I can only commend, you know, as a person that was not in it but saw it, right?
Yeah.
And so to say to a group of people for no reason at all, hey, you're not good enough because supposedly you're going to cost us too much money, is so just dismissing of people that contribute so much more than we all realize to not only the military but just society at large. And so when that happened and I was in the VA and I was seeing my veterans, a lot of my older trans veterans were particularly triggered by that, mostly because they were able to serve and just kind of fly under the radar for their service. But a lot of the younger veterans, or sorry, the younger service members that were still in, that were open and out and that were supportive and helping other individuals come out while in the military, they were losing that chance. And so it almost became more of a toxic culture that transphobia and homophobia were almost allowed and encouraged. And it was like a very hard place for a lot of my trans veterans that we had to talk about for quite a while. And so a lot of their therapy goals would be put on hold for us to just process it. Because I mean, as you remember, it was like one thing after another. It was like a whole week long of, you know, trans people aren't allowed in the military. States can't help trans people with pretty much anything. HUD, like the housing initiative, can't help trans people. It was like a war against trans people for like 2 weeks. And so,
and there still kind of is a war against trans people. I think I specifically think that our trans kin are most vulnerable and under attack right now in the quote unquote culture war in America right now. I really do. And I mean, and the worst part is, like, you know, kind of zooming the lens out to include, you know, lots of people of color, minority groups, and just poor people. You know, the military, the U.S. government, very shadily and very, you know, sinisterly offers the military to these marginalized groups as an alternative to the poverty that they've been living in all their life. And unfortunately, you know, a lot of the time, you know, they talk, you know, the whole military ban for trans people was, you know, specifically like all put under the guise of like for the budget of the military, quote unquote. But the thing is, you know, the allocation of the budget, you know, I'm sure because once again, you work for the VA and you see all of these veterans, you know, the military budget, like a lot of general care for veterans post-war is not really considered at all for any veteran. You know what I mean? Like, once again, it's offered as an alternative to poverty, but a lot of the time, you know, a lot of veterans, whether or not they've been honorably discharged, still to a degree will end up in not such a great economic social status, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I think that it is, as a person that works for the VA, I have members of my family, my father, both my grandfathers are veterans. The healthcare system that we have and the people that are in the healthcare system for veterans, they are some of the kindest, if not the kindest people, you know, the most selfless. And we do this job not to be rich, you know,
right.
It's beyond that. But I think what was the most hurtful is that a lot of the funds, without any of our say, was allocated to a lot of other different programs and specialty and private things that we're still kind of trying to figure out where some of that money went, right? And so my dissertation, I focused on creating a intake form to be used in the VA, specifically for trans and non-binary folks.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I looked at when I was researching my dissertation was this argument that trans people in the military would cost this exorbitant amount of money for hormones and, you know, pre and post-op services and all these different things, and just general comfort for that veteran.
Yeah.
For the trans person and that service member. And when you look at it, it was interesting, because I wish I had the specific article pulled up, but I can probably send it to you. But the actual cost was less than it cost for service members to get dental. It was like so tiny, because people actually started fact checking it. It was so tiny and minuscule that it shouldn't have even been an argument.
Right. Well, that, and the population of trans people is tiny and minuscule as well. So it's not like you have this overwhelming number of trans people coming into the military. And I hate this myth that they kept pushing that was like, people are only going to join the military just so they can transition and then they're going to leave, which is like impossible. You can't just like come in and be like, all right, right, like I'm a woman now, bye. Like that's not how that works. Right, like
I'm gonna give you my BDUs back and thank you for it was just, it was like this ridiculous rumor, but also this idea where again, this false narrative being pushed forward that to be trans you have to have surgery or you have to be on hormones, you know, that that's where all this is going to be coming from. Okay, you know, a woman is a woman, right? It doesn't matter the plumbing or whatever. If you are a woman, you are a woman, right?
Yeah.
Surgery does not a woman make, or a man make, or a person make.
Right.
And so this whole like idea that we have to allocate all these things to medical stuff and whatever, it's like just preposterous. It's like, okay, I have a group of cisgender women in the military. I have to allocate all this money toward maternal care. Who knows if those people even want to have children? You know that, right? It doesn't. Yeah, it's crazy. The world is crazy. And then I'm gonna get off my soapbox at some point, but this idea like that trans people are only good enough for entertainment, but then when actual time for action calls, none of the people that enjoyed like the show Pose, for example, or any other show that has like a trans person in there as like a colorful character, none of those people show up. Yeah.
It's I mean, it's a great amount of hypocrisy, and that is, you know, it blows my mind, you know. I mean, and we saw the exact same thing last summer with Black Lives Matter, you know. So many people that were like, yes, I support Black lives, and then like once the hype died down, it was kind of like, all right, on to the next thing, you know what I mean? Like
like the Instagram square thing where you
Blackout Tuesday or whatever. Yeah,
that whole blackout thing. And then it's like, okay, this is cute. What else are we gonna do?
Right, like that's not helping anything. Where's your money? Like, I'm sorry, but like, where's your money?
Right.
Like
two things. Either you're gonna donate to people that can be change makers, or show up at a rally. Literally go outside, you know.
Yeah it's a lot, and that's the thing, you know. There are a lot of systems. I think just there are a lot of systems in America that are broken, and I think now more than ever, I think once the pandemic hit, I think that definitely I think that pumped the brakes on everyone being able to, you know, avoid, you know, let's use psychological terms, use avoidance behavior. And I think that once the avoidance behavior was gone, I think that's why we're seeing such an outcrop of people finally having to confront their mental health. And and so psychology is important, you know. I mean,
yeah, it absolutely is. I think you're completely right. If the pandemic showed us anything, it's that you can only avoid things for so long until you are literally alone with you, and you have to be able to be comfortable to live with you.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people, I mean, there was a big uptick when I was working at the VA during the pandemic of people that were like, hey, so I've never been in therapy before, but I've been alone in my house with myself for 2 weeks, and I didn't realize that this is how I felt about my life, right? And it's just like that same referral over and over again. And hell, I mean, I was sitting in my house with my wife for 2 weeks
Yeah.
or more and thinking, I love her so much, I'm gonna have to kill her. You know what I
Right. Yeah.
mean? But it's like any sort of like isolation or stuff, it does that to you, and it just shows the importance of mental health. Like, it shows the importance of mental health in comparison to physical health. It's just as important, and in a lot of ways it goes hand in hand,
They do.
right?
They do. Yeah. I mean, there something that I found out is like, and you can take everybody out there listening, remember this, your stomach is your second brain.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why, probiotics are surprisingly like really good for your mental health. Like, I'm not saying that they're gonna, I mean, don't just take probiotics instead of going to therapy and like getting actual medication. However, it's just like a constant exercise regimen,
Yeah.
you gotta keep feeding your brain,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't do a cleanse and expect to get out of depression. Like, that's not
right.
how it works at all. But I definitely hear you. If you take care of your body and you shower every day, brush your teeth, you go out, you make yourself breakfast, you take a walk. And I'm not saying jog, like you could just walk. If you move your body in some way, you feed yourself well, not only with food, but spiritually, but in art and all
Mhm.
those different things, it is all tied together. And sometimes it sounds a little hokey, but it's true. Like, if you really immerse yourself in all the things that you love, it is a never ending cycle of just, wellness.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Wellness is that's why you keep hearing the word wellness everywhere, everywhere. We say well. Um, so really quick, Natalia, how is your mental health?
Well, presently it is getting better. Like I said, I was in grad school for a while, and listeners, do not take this as anybody out there thinking that they want to do grad school, don't do it. That's not what I'm saying. Live your dreams, people. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that grad school for me was a lot. It was a lot mentally. It was a lot of second guessing. It was a lot. And this last Saturday, I actually graduated. I walked across the stage. I did that whole song and dance. It was wonderful. And in that moment, when I was getting hooded and it was done, I felt happy again.
Hmm.
And it sounds crazy, but it was like that switch went off and I felt so much better. And so, I mean, again, like I said earlier, this is my job. I'm a therapist, I'm a clinician, and even I get stuck in spots where it's just like I am not having a good mental health day and I don't want to do anything,
Hmm.
right? It is all about routine. But yeah, mental health wise, I'm starting to feel better. What about you, Jacob?
With therapy, it's a daily thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
right now, some days I feel totally myself, and then other days, I feel not so myself. It really just depends. And that's the thing. It could even fluctuate during the day. Like, I'll have a great couple of hours, then I'll have an hour or two where I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't know, like, what, like, why, like, it's not good. But
Yeah.
generally, I will say that my mental health is better than it was a couple of months ago. Definitely in a lot better place now. It's really interesting too. During the pandemic, I and maybe it was my own avoidance. I don't know, but during the pandemic, I was fine. Like, I mean, I was sad, I was a little scared and everything, but at the end of the day, I felt a weird sense of calm and safety and everything. I guess because living in America right now, this past decade or so, you know, it's been one of the, and seeing the way that people are, it's kind of like, well, this is kind of like the cherry on top. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
but like, you know, it's kind of funny because like there was a recent period in my life, you know, where I wanted to isolate myself, you know.
Right.
Well, whereas during the pandemic, it was like I would just like put on my mask and like go to the grocery store just to have something to do and get out and be around people. And then like once again, very recently, it was like I don't want to leave the house right now. Like I don't want to, you know, I don't feel safe going out there, you know, like even I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and I know the pandemic's still going on, but it was like I have no desire. You know what I mean? Like I have no desire to like
Right.
be out and be around people. I want to stay here in this room. And once again, very recently I've started going out again and just enjoying life again. And so, you know, everybody listen to Into the Mind book, season 3, episode 1, and look out for the sequel coming soon. But yeah, no, that's my mental health, and I'm sticking to it. Um,
You know, I'm proud of you because it is not an easy thing when you are stuck and you feel stuck and you feel like you're not in the best place to keep pushing forward, right? The easy thing is to sit on the couch one more day, or to not answer that phone call, or to not text that friend back. Like, it is easier to do that. It is so difficult, and it can feel so difficult to push through and to say, you know what, it's going to be different. I had these first 2 hours, I stubbed my toe. Like, for example, this morning I woke up, I had the best sleep, right? And then immediately I stubbed my toe. And I was so pissed off. I'm like, great, this is just how the rest of my day is going to be. And instead of like letting it ruin the rest of my day, I got in the car and I listened to, I'm a Barbra Streisand fanatic, and so I listened to Barbra Streisand ridiculously loud in my car, and I felt better. And it's like those little moments, those like little trials, it's like tests right at the beginning where it's like, okay, you know, Jacob, are you gonna let this get you down? No, you got this. No.
yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where it's like, hey, how many times have I stubbed my toe before and been totally fine? Like,
Right.
this is just the same. I can't let it be a determination of anything. I get to determine how things are going to go. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So, Natalia, if you could go back in time and give your childhood self any words of comfort or wisdom, what would they be?
Hmm. I think it would definitely be never stop loving you. Never stop loving you authentically, because you are never going to fit into the ideal person, like the popular girl in school, or you know, the jocks and all these different things. You're going to try so hard to fit into these groups and these boxes that you just don't belong in, and that's okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that for a part of my life after I came out, I was like, how, okay, am I too gay? Which I was just so led by this like stereotype of like myself of, I love a ridiculous amount musical theater, Barbra Streisand. I feel like I find myself watching more shows from like the 70s and 80s more than I watch shows from now. It's just like, it's comfort for me. And I always felt like I had to apologize for that part of myself, or to apologize for enjoying sci-fi, or apologize for all these different things, because it wasn't cool, or people didn't understand, and that I would have to like over explain and almost like bury different parts of myself to make other people comfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
I would tell my younger self, stop, be yourself, like fly that flag, be yourself to a ridiculous amount if you have to, because ultimately at the end of the day, you are awesome, right? Just like Jacob, you are awesome, and the listeners that are listening, you are all awesome. You are awesome because you are you, and there's no other you out there. So why try and be anybody else?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even if you're just finding whoever you are, that's okay too. We're none of us is perfect. We're not, the book is never finished until, you die. But like, you know,
But
keep writing your story.
it's so true because you could think that you know who you are, and then boom, all of a sudden you're somebody else. And guess what? That's fine. You can be whoever you want to be. You could live your life for, I don't know, 20, 25 years as a man. And then you're like, you know what? I am a woman and I've always been a woman. Great. Live that truth. I love that for you. Be who you want to be and be it unashamed. And just know that you have a whole community of people, even if I don't physically know you and Jacob may not know you, that we care about you and to reach out if you need anything. Like that's the kind of community that's going to make this world a better place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on this show. You've been quite a joy. Um, I definitely think I think people will benefit from hearing what you have to say. Um, do you have any shout outs, promos, philanthropic opportunities that my audience should know about?
So shout outs to the Florida School of Professional Psychology, who was my graduate program, who are great, who I graduated from on Saturday. You guys are awesome. I will say that for my queer folk out there, shoot for the stars, because I didn't see any, LGBT therapists when I was younger. In fact, I got all the ones that made me uncomfortable. And so I told myself that I was going to be the person that I wish that I had. And if that's what needs to drive you to live your dreams, and do it. And so psychology needs you. We need more LGBT therapists. We just need them, especially of color. And so come find us. If you need a therapist, you need somebody to talk to. There are a lot more affirming therapists nowadays than there ever has been. There are a number of different places. If you are on a budget or you just don't have the means, there are a lot of nonprofits in your area that can provide LGBT affirming therapy, but also work within your schedule and your monetary means. I used to work in Tampa. Shout out to the Institute for Psychological Health and Wellness, Dr. Gary Howell. He's one of my mentors, and he does therapy there at a sliding scale for LGBT individuals for therapy. And so even if you're not living in Tampa, Florida, you can't see Dr. Howell or the people that work for them, you can go to Google or any other search engine and look up those kind of therapy resources. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Who knows? Maybe I'll do a podcast in the future because this is great.
There you go. No, you're a natural kid. You're born to do it. You're born to do it.
Thank you. But so who knows, maybe that'll pop up for me. But if anybody has any questions about psychology or therapy, or is a little apprehensive about anything, being a sexual minority or gender minority and getting into therapy, just reach out to me. My Instagram handle is Cyclops, PSYCHLOPS _ 0817. And yeah, just reach out. But thank you so much, Jacob, for having me on. This was awesome.
Oh my God. No, it was really my pleasure, honey. And hopefully maybe I can have you on another episode in the future.
Oh yeah, mental health month. We could definitely do that.
Absolutely. I would love that.